Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So about a week ago, I went through all 16 of the non-playoff teams and graded their seasons based on how they performed in the standings or their expectations. How did their young players develop? And I thought that a week later now, I would kind of inspire maybe some hope or maybe some pessimism regarding these teams and rank who are the most likely to go from missing the playoffs to making the playoffs next year. So we're going to start with 16th, work our way all the way down to first. When you look at this, it's based on what their team currently looks like for next season. Do they have salary cap? Are they going to be able to spend a decent amount in free agency to improve their team? Or do they just have like $5 to $10 million to basically give me running back the same group? What are the expectations in terms of like your general manager is going to go all in? And I think that the Eastern Conference is going to be easier to make the playoffs than the Western Conference. I think the Western Conference, the St. Louis Blues, that spot is definitely up for grabs. I could see maybe some of the teams regressing a little bit. But in the Eastern Conference, I think the Senators, potentially the Devils if they can't stay healthy, Washington, I think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think they're going to come back down a little bit to earth. Even Montreal as well, even though they're young and made the playoffs, are pretty shit defensively. So I think the Eastern Conference is more, there's more spots up for grabs. So you're going to see, although I might like a team, I think a team's going to be better next season. If they're in the Western Conference, they're probably just going to have a harder path to make the playoffs. So without further ado, let's dive into it. Also with the Eastern Conference, Tampa Bay, after a gutting loss, might fall off as well. Let's get into it. And up first at 16th, no shocker here. The San Jose Sharks were a 52-point team this season and traded their starting goalie, Mackenzie Blackwood. Although they traded him like 2 months in the season. Traded Jake Wallman, traded Mikael Granlund, traded Fabian Zetterlund. I don't think that they're going to be a 52-point team. I think Guerrero's going to bring in some guys this season, like the Toffoli deal that he made last year. But yeah, they should probably easily be a bottom three team in the NHL. They got to bring in some kind of goaltender or else they might be really bad because I don't think Askarov's ready to immediately play a serious role. And that defense core is going to easily be the worst in the NHL after moving off Wallman. It's like Ferraro and then a whole lot of bad. So yeah, San Jose, they improved off last year, but they were a 47-point team last year. I'd expect like 60 points next year. Next year's kind of like the final year of their rebuild and you definitely want to get a guaranteed top 3, top 4 pick in next year's draft with all the studs that are going to be in it. They're definitely the least likely playoff team right now. At 15th, I got the Chicago Blackhawks as well. I think that they're going to take a sizable step, probably a bigger step than San Jose, because it's not like they really sold that heavily this year during the season. Yes, they traded Seth Jones, but got an upgraded net with Spencer Knight. I think they're going to be aggressive in free agency in terms of getting high-end guys versus San Jose. I think it's going to be more veteran presence. I think Davidson should definitely take a swing on a Brock Besser or Nikolai Ehlers. I think they're going to be around the low 70s, mid 70s after a 61-point season. They're just not going to go from 61 points to 95 points. It's going to be necessary. What's going to be huge for this team is how is Sam Rinzel and Artem Leshinov going to play at the NHL level? They could, if those guys are just like, okay, rookies, I'm not expecting a ton, but they're probably going to have like a bottom 3, bottom 5 defense if those guys don't really overexceed expectations, but they could actually be a decent team and have just like a below average defense if those guys step up in a big way. And to round out our bottom 3 that I think is kind of a consensus bottom 3, I got the Pittsburgh Penguins at 14th. Now, they could honestly, I think the Chicago Blackhawks could jump Pittsburgh if Pittsburgh goes out this summer and trades Rickard Rakell, trades Erik Karlsson. If they trade both of them, San Jose might be ahead of them. But I think at this point, they still have a lot of veteran good players. I don't know. Again, they're 14th. They're 14th most likely. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. But after that brutal start, they actually were playing pretty solid hockey for a while. This year at the deadline, traded Marcus Pettersson. Won't have him next year. Won't be able to replicate that. I don't expect Kyle Dubas to get some kind of stud defenseman, as well as a lot of depth pieces gone from this team. They're in the process of bottoming out, and yeah, as a result, have them 14th, have them bottom 3. It starts to get interesting at 13th. I'm going to go with Philadelphia. Now, there's a large variability with this team, considering they have so many assets, where they could get a serious number 1 center this summer and fly up this list because they have 3 first-round picks, they have 4 second-round picks, they have salary cap space, and also the goaltending is such an identifiable weakness with this team. They had around the negative 40 goals saved above expected last year, but based on the roster right now, it's probably going to be one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. I love Michkov. I love some of their pieces on it, and they are a pretty young team. But it's looking like a 75-ish point team right now at this point. They don't really have any guys that stand out outside of Konechny and Michkov for the most part. But they could be decent. Got to see who the coach is as well. You can maybe bump them up some spots if they get a coach that I really like. But right now, just because they haven't made any moves to really improve this team, I think 13th is a pretty fair spot for the Philadelphia Flyers. At 12th, Give me the Seattle Kraken. They were a bad team last year, traded some pieces at the deadline. Yanni Gord, Oliver Bjorkstrand, as well as Tanev. They have some money to spend now. Do I trust Ron Francis to spend that money? No, not at all after the Montour and Stevenson deals. In the Pacific Division, I think they're either the 6th or 7th best team. Some teams that we're going to be talking about that they're going to be competing with. New coach, again, like Philadelphia. Maybe I could be a little bit moved by that, but I don't know how attractive the Seattle job is in terms of bringing a top-end coach. If you want to see my rankings for the GM and coaching openings, feel free to go check that out. So yeah, I think Seattle, they're just on pace for another, unless like Beniers really gets back on track to his rookie year. Shane Wright takes a big next step. Riker Evans is a legit good second pair defenseman next year. This team just screams mediocre in my opinion. And I don't see themselves digging themselves out of it this summer. Although they do have a lot of assets and cap space, something maybe could happen, but it would take a lot to really move me on this team and to say that they're going to be a team that's going to go north of 90 points that's needed for the playoffs. At 11th, give me the Nashville Predators. Now, people are going to say this was the third worst team last year. Everything went wrong for this team basically throughout the season in terms of just pure hockey luck. When you look at their actual underlying numbers, they had the 17th best 5-on-5 expected goals percentage at 49.67%. Actually, at 5-on-5, their actual goals percentage 40.63%. In all situations, they were at 50.75, which is 14th best actual goals percentage in all situations, 43.62. So I think that they're just bound for regression. On top of UC Soros, I don't expect him to post another season of an 895. It is possible that, again, Barry Trotz sells a lot of core pieces this summer, and we will adjust this. But I think they're going to mainly run back the same team, and I think that they're not as good as they were in 2024 when they had the 18-game point streak or whatever to make the playoffs, but they're not as bad as the team that they are right now. So, I think I'd have the Predators at around 82, 83 point. No, actually, probably like 78, 79, but they're not as bad as they are right now. Because, granted, like even though they did get unlucky last year, they are getting a year older and their core is pretty old. But I think that they're somewhat of a regression candidate that could be a pretty decent team. At 10th, I am going with the Vancouver Canucks. When looking at it, they were in the playoff race towards the end there of the Western Conference, but you look at what they're bringing into next season, or what they're not bringing into next season. No JT Miller, probably no Brock Besser. Elias Pettersson had 19 points in his final 37 games this season, looking like a third-line center for the most part. Demko can't stay healthy. Lankinen had a really good start to the season, but he's not a true starter. We saw it once the workload started to catch up with him. He finished with a 901, and basically like most models just had him at like 0 goal saves above expected. So he wasn't bad. Again, he wasn't bad, but he's not a legit starter in the NHL. Good starter. They did add Marcus Pettersson at the deadline. I think they're going to have a formidable defense, but that offense, unless Pettersson can really bounce back to 90-plus point form, they will have some money to spend with Brock Besser walking. But I don't trust Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, especially Rutherford, the way that he's running his mouth right now about this team. Yeah, a lot of guys don't have us at the top of our list for free agency. What the hell are you saying? Please take the mic away from him. Quinn Hughes is going to carry them to like respectability. But in terms of making the playoffs, I just like a lot of the current Western Conference playoff teams and teams that are starting to like come out of their rebuild to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. 9th, I got the Boston Bruins. Probably, they could potentially make the playoffs if everything goes their way next season. It's probably more of a 2-year rebuild just because they did trade so many important pieces to this team, or 2 main pieces to this team, and Brad Marchand and Brendan Carlo. They also traded Coyle, also traded Frederick. The goaltending is the X factor here. If you told me that Swayman had 9-12 goaltending, which still might have been worth $8.25 million, then I'd say that they're definitely going to be battling for a playoff spot. But last year, they had the 6th worst save percentage, because Korpisalo was also pretty shit in the NHL after like a decade and a half of being consensus top 10, top 5 tandems. So yeah, that's my main concern. This team is pretty old, and they are going to have some money because of some of the money that they moved out. But like Ron Francis, I don't trust Don Sweeney after he signed 2 of the worst free agency deals. So yeah, if Swayman can bounce back, they'll be in the mix. If not, they're probably going to stink for another season, and that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to get a top 6 pick in this year and then get a top 7 to 8 pick next year when it is a stronger draft, or it appears to be that way. Don't completely rush this retool, but with Pasternak, they're probably not going to be a bottom 4, bottom 3 team. He's just too damn good. We saw that in the back half of the season. Next up at number 8, give me the Buffalo Sabres. If everything breaks right, could be a playoff team. They just have so many U26 guys where theoretically, if they all took steps, this team could be solid again. They were so close 2 seasons ago for making the playoffs. I think that they're not going to be as bad as they were this year. Kevin Adams needs to be aggressive in terms of getting veterans. They are young, but they need some veteran leadership. Zucker actually was a really good pickup for Buffalo this season. On top of some right-handed defensemen, they have a shit ton of lefties. Like their top 4 defensemen are all on that goddamn left side. Get a veteran right-hand guy. And I think that they're going to have a shot. I'd probably put them at like 26%. I wouldn't pick them right now, but as long as guys like Benson can take steps, Jack Quinn can get back on track, Peterka is really broken out. They should be solid as long as they can avoid a 13 or 14 game losing streak as well. That really derailed their season. Clearly, they should not be that bad next season. At 7th, I have my New York Islanders, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they kind of stink next year because I want them to get a high pick in next year's draft as well. But based on what I'm hearing from this general manager source, not like inside source or anything, just hearing on Twitter from the actual reporters, is that like ownership seems to not want to stink. They seem that they would just want to fill the building and potentially get back on track, do like an immediate retool. So I'm starting to get scared. And when looking at this team, I mean, they did only finish with like 82 points, but a lot did go wrong with this team. A lot of identifiable things. The special teams were apocalyptically bad, second to last in power play and penalty kill. They can really only improve on that, as well as big injuries to Matt Barzal. Only played like 30 games this season. Romanov, Pelech, Duclair, Varlamov basically missed the entire season. So, I think that they're going to be if they run back the same team. I know that they lost Brock Nelson, but if they run back the same team, and I think that a new general manager might even bring in some people, I think that they could be a high 80s, low 90s kind of team. I'm not going to lie. Although, again, I kind of don't want that. I kind of want one more year of stink for the retool. But I think that this team is going to be a little bit undervalued heading into next season, and they definitely have a pretty high floor when looking at what they've done in prior seasons. At 6th, I have the Calgary Flames. Talk about like providing a floor. Dustin Wolf in his second season is probably going to provide this team like an 82, 83 point floor. Last year, they were third in goals, had third to last in goals, not third to goals. And they finished with like 96 points. I think they might come back down a little bit, but I don't expect Conroy to really sell. I think he's going to extend Rasmus Anderson, and especially after the Frost and Farabee trades, I think he's going to try to retool by acquiring young kind of reclamation projects. I don't expect him to trade Anderson for if he trades Anderson for a decent amount, even though Rasmus Anderson wasn't that good this season, I would move them down this list. But they should somewhat be in the mix next year. A good mix of veterans and young guys in that forward core. I love Mackenzie Weegar. And Dustin Wolf is probably going to solidify himself as like a top 12, top 10 goalie in the NHL. So Calgary, I wouldn't have them in the playoffs, but could potentially be in the mix yet again. I'm not going to completely shit on them like last offseason. At number 5, the Anaheim Ducks took a big jump to 80 points. And although it was mainly the goalie tandem, first off, it's still uncertain whether or not John Gibson is going to get moved this summer. If he does get moved, they're definitely going to fall some spots. But if they run into next season with that tandem, that's a pretty easy top 10 tandem in the NHL. I think a new coach is really going to reinvigorate this team offensively while Cronin kind of plateaued some of these guys' development. And while they do have some RFAs like Dostal and McTavish, they have $40 million in cap space. And I think it's time to spend. So even though I think last year, in terms of their forwards and defensemen, they were only like a 70-point-ish team. That goaltending just elevated them so much. I think they're going to be able to spend a decent amount, and I think a new coach is really going to be able to get the most out of guys like Carlson, out of guys like Cutter Gauthier, Olin Zellweger, where I think that they're a decent threat. I wouldn't pick them to take another big jump from 80 points to 95 points, but I think they're going to be hovering around the mid-80s, high 80s, and be a decent threat. Be playing actual important games come late March, still potentially being in the playoff race. They're definitely a decent threat. At number 4, I'm showing some love to the Detroit Red Wings, mainly because I think the pressure is on Steve Yzerman to do some shit this summer to get this team in the playoffs, because if he doesn't make the playoffs next year, I feel like that's kind of irredeemable. He might deserve to actually get fired after that. This season, 86 points. Last year, 91 points. So they've kind of established a floor. And even when looking at the season, they started out so disastrously with Lalonde. McClellan came in, 96-point pace under him. You're going to get internal growth from guys like Sider, Raymond, Casper was really impressive in his rookie year. Edvinson as well as some other guys from the AHL making the jump up. So they're an interesting team. And also, speaking about New York Islanders and special teams, Detroit's penalty kill was the worst in the NHL at 70.1%, 2.1% worse than my New York Islanders. So if Yzerman can address that, especially on the defensive side, speaking of outside of Seider and Edvinson, a lot of room for improvement on that defense core to potentially get better, where I think that Detroit is potentially going to be a threat to make the wild card versus last year. I thought their defense core was just so bad and their bottom six was kind of lackluster, so I wasn't so high on them. Not saying I have them in the playoffs, but they're more of a threat this season, and especially with Yzerman having his back up against the wall. And third, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. This year, shocked everybody in terms of being in the wild card race. Their underlying numbers did suggest that they were more so of like a 81 point pace team. They were like 23rd through 26th in most underlying stats. But yeah, guys like Fantilli, end of the season, 39 points in 44 games. Kent Johnson, 57 points in 68 games. Three big X factors with this team. Are they going to re-sign Ivan Provorov? I don't love the idea of giving him an 8-year deal, but for next season, he's big for this team in terms of their defenseman depth. Because number two, what is Denton Mateychuk going to look like? He was solid in his first year. He played like 45, 50 games. But if he takes a sizable step, that makes me really high on this team. And third, what are they going to do in net? Elvis Merzlikins is just not good. Jet Greaves was great down the stretch, good in the AHL. Are they going to let Jet Greaves run with it? Or are they going to somehow move out Merzlikins, bring in a more experienced, good goalie? That can make me really high on this team. But right now, I think, again, they're going to be a high 80s, low 90s kind of team battling for the playoffs towards the end of the season. And second, I unfortunately have the New York Rangers. This team still has arguably the best goalie in the NHL, not best defenseman. People are about to kill me for that. A no doubt number one defenseman in Adam Fox. And although the forward core is old, it still should be pretty effective next season. A full season with JT Miller. Chris Kreider, I don't know. I don't think that he's going to have another sub-10 assist season. And I think Chris Drury's kind of fighting for his job when looking at it, although he did get a multi-year extension. If he missed the playoffs in back-to-back years, Dolan has the money. He is firing his ass after being so disappointing. And I think the Sullivan hire is pretty solid. And I think it is an upgrade over Laviolette. We saw Sullivan at Four Nations coach a pretty damn good strategy for the United States, especially in that first game against Canada. He just has had bad players in years past on the Pittsburgh Penguins, old-ass players. They're not going to be able to upgrade the defense core. They have like $8 to $10 million to re-sign Keandre Miller and Will Cooley. That's all going to go to them. So the D-core is going to be a major concern, but I think that this team easily could get back in the playoffs as long as they're not fighting in the locker room, but having a shit locker room and just not putting an effort out there. I think Mike Sullivan's going to get a decent amount of this group and potentially get them back in the playoffs. And then in first, the most likely non-playoff team to make the playoffs, the Utah Hockey Club. This year, they were in the mix until like the final 2 weeks of the season for that last West wildcard spot. Finished with 89 points. They have a metric shit ton of cap space, or at least not on like raw numbers right now. They only have 22 million, but unlike other teams that have 20 to 30 million, they have like no notable unrestricted or restricted free agents. That's like $12 million. Probably got to give like $3 to $4 million, let's call it, to like some of their depth guys, but $18 to $19 million to just spend on guys. And some of their guys are already locked up long term, like Gunther. I think Keller has a couple more years left, so they can go nuts. They can bring in a true impact forward that I think that they should do. Maybe bring in a defenseman on top of that. Some more depth within that forward core, and they'll be a true wild card contender in the Western Conference. This year, analytically, they were also very good. 5th best expected goals percentage at 5-on-5, 11th best expected goals in all situations. And the goalie tandem, Vejmelka, very impressive this year. And hopefully Connor Ingram, for those that don't know, last year he was great for Utah. This season, struggled a bit, but then it was revealed that his mom passed away and he had to enter the NHL Players Assistance Program. So praying that he can get back to 100% mentally. And they're going to have a very good goalie tandem for Utah. So I think they're kind of the number one consensus pick, in my opinion, for the non-playoff teams, considering how young they are, how much money they have to spend, and on top of the fact that analytically they were pretty damn good last year. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? How many teams do you think that are non-playoff teams are going to be in the playoffs right now? I'd probably set the over-under at what, like 3.5 seems like an about fair number. I'm not going to say who I think is going to fall out, but every year someone that we're shocked by, like the New York Rangers this year, fall out of the playoffs, and then wild cards tend to change a decent amount. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.